Hey y'all, I'm Lauren and welcome to my channel. I'm finally doing my review on Convergence today. I posted a reading vlog about this a few days ago, which the reading vlogs are kind of more of just like my initial reactions as I'm reading, and then now I have a review of like the book as a whole where I'm going to be going through and explaining the plot and all of that kind of stuff. But before I get to that, I did have an announcement that I wanted to make first. So there is a video that I've already posted which goes into a lot more detail about this, but I also wanted to mention it in this video as well. So this video is my first video that's actually going to be posted on this channel, and it's also going to be posted on Cantina Cast's channel as well. Cantina Cast is a pretty popular Star Wars podcast that has been on the air for 10 years, and I've been a fan of theirs for a while. And I just really love the way that they cover Star Wars in its entirety. And they actually asked me to come over to their channel and start covering the books for them as well. Basically, what's going to be happening is this channel is going to be moving over to being part of Cantina Cast channel. So I'm kind of just like teaming up with them, and I'm going to help them with their coverage. So I'm not going anywhere. I'm still going to be doing the same thing. I'm still going to be doing Star Wars coverage of the books, and I'm going to keep covering new releases, and I'm also going to cover some past books as well. So I'm going to still be doing the same thing, but I'm just going to be moving over to Cantina Cast to do it. So if you want to keep following what I'm posting and my coverage of Star Wars books, go subscribe to Cantina Cast. I will link them down in the description below, so that way you can easily find their channel. If you want to hear more about that, then go watch my separate video that I make where I'm just talking about that announcement. So I'll link that below as well. So that's like my brief announcement. I'm gonna announce it a couple different times because I want to make sure that everybody who wants to keep following me knows where I'm going to be in the future. So now that's out of the way, so let's talk about Convergence. Okay, so Convergence by Zoraida Córdova. This is the first adult novel in phase 2 of the High Republic. So it's the first adult novel in phase 2, but we did have a young adult novel come out before this, which was Path of Deceit. I will say that if you're interested in phase 2 of the High Republic, I do think that reading Path of Deceit before you read this book is going to be helpful. I know that there's some people who just like only want to follow the adult novels, but for me, I feel like Path of Deceit really gave us some details about the Path of the Open Hand that this book didn't really have time to go into as much. Oh, and by the way, if you watched my reading vlog, you know that my pronunciations were all over the place. So I did confirm some of those like planet pronunciations and name pronunciations. So if you hear me pronouncing things differently in this video than I was pronouncing them in the reading vlog, it's because I went and checked the pronunciations. I mean, that's the thing about the reading vlogs, you know, it's like fresh and raw and as I'm reading it. But anyway, so the two planets that we're dealing with are Irem and Irano. These two planets have been at war for as long as anybody can remember. They've had various periods throughout their history of being at war with each other, and then it sounds like there's been times that the war has kind of slowed down and then picked up again. It's just been drama from the start with these two. But at the start of this book, there actually is currently a ceasefire going on, and it's been like the longest ceasefire that's happened in like a really, really long time, like as long as anybody can remember. And the ceasefire has only been going on for 3 days, and that's the longest one. So that just kind of gives you an idea of like how deep in conflict these planets are with each other. During the ceasefire, we have a squadron from Irano, which is going up to space to meet an ice shipment. And the reason they're meeting the ice shipment is because that's how this planet gets their water supply, is from this ice that's being delivered to them. And the ice shipment was late. So the squadron's going up to meet them. And when that happens, one of the ships has actually been sabotaged by a member of the Path of the Open Hand who did this like secretly. So when they all go up there to meet the ice shipment, the sabotage ship, it starts going crazy, flying all over the place, and because it's like acting erratically, that spooks Irem, who is watching them as they're up there, and it makes the ceasefire end because that ship like crashes and explodes. While all of this is going on, there's also a Republic ship in orbit which has Jedi on it, and it also has one of the chancellors of the Republic on it, Chancellor Malo. Now there's two chancellors of the Republic at this time. So right now on this Republic ship that sees this whole situation go down, it's just one of the chancellors that sees. The Jedi that are on this ship, they try to stop the ceasefire from getting messed up, but they're not successful in that. And so they have the idea that they want to try to help these two planets negotiate peace. And so they invite them to a peace summit, which is going to be held on the Chancellor's ship. Now, the reason that the Republic ship was up in orbit in the first place is because they were about to deliver aid to Iram, and the reason that they're only delivering it to Iram is because Irano does not want to deal with any outsiders, so they didn't ask for aid, but Iram did ask for aid. And so that kind of gives you an idea of like, Irano is very, very hesitant to dealing with anybody. They're very mistrustful of everyone. Iram is at least like kind of like trying to get aid where they can get it. So while this peace summit is being planned, Ziri, she's the captain of the squadron that was up in space when the ceasefire ended, and she also is the princess of Irano. So her ship, during all of that, crash lands on Iram, and she lands in the sea. When that happens, Fantuzen, who just so happens to be the prince of Iram, he sees the ship crash. He knows that it's someone from Irano, but he still like has pity on them, swims out there and rescues her. When this happens, she is very upset at first because she thinks that he's going to hurt her or like keep her prisoner or something, but that's really not what he's trying to do. He's just genuinely trying to help her, and he brings her back to his home, and his mother is the queen of Iram, and so they do have like a conversation where the queen of Iram is trying to convince Ziri that she's not a prisoner, she's just a guest right now, and they're going to go to the peace summit, and they want Ziri to come with them because they genuinely want to try to have some sort of resolution here, because the Queen of Iram is fully aware of the fact that this cannot continue the way it's been going. So they go to the peace summit. Ziri goes with the Queen of Iram, and Irano also comes as well. And the peace summit is not going well. Irano, the monarch of Irano, pretty much shows up upset because he believes that Iram has been holding his daughter prisoner, even though Iram has said that she's not a prisoner, she's a guest. That's not enough for him. He still feels like she was being held prisoner. So he shows up upset. And also Iram really isn't helping the situation either. Basically, both sides, they're not really, during this peace summit, they're not really trying to actually find a resolution. They start just airing grievances and complaining to each other and like trying to one up the other one on like who's had it worse. And so it's not going well so far. During this peace summit, there is something strange that happens with the Queen of Iram. So a member of the Path of the Open Hand shows up on the ship and has a conversation with her and basically threatens her. And at this point in the story, we don't yet know what exactly went wrong between them, but it sounds like the queen has been working with them on something, and that I guess like that agreement that they had is not going well anymore. And so the Path of the Open Hand is frustrated with the queen for that, and the queen feels like she's ended up in a bad situation by working with them. That's kind of like the impression that we get from this scene, although at this point we don't know any details yet. After this, while the peace summit is still going on, because the peace summit lasts for a few days, what happens is Ziri comes up with the idea to propose a marriage alliance between the two planets. So she's thinking that her and Fantuzen could get married, and it would be kind of like, you know, it's symbolic of peace, but it also gives them a chance to actually work on a treaty, and they're both invested in the situation. So Iram supports this. They think it's a good idea. Irano, of course, they have to kind of be convinced because they're more reluctant to these sorts of things, but eventually they do come to an agreement that they're going to have this marriage alliance. But not everybody takes the marriage alliance well. So one of Ziri's close friends, who is another captain of an Irano squadron, he does not take this well, and he goes to Fantuzen's room to challenge him. What happens is, while he's in there, somebody shows up who is looking for Fantuzen but finds this captain in his room instead and kills the captain. Now, when I first read this at the time, I thought it must have been someone from the Path of the Open Hand, since right before this scene, there was a conversation happening between them and the Queen. But we later find out that it's a little more complicated than that, so I'll get to that soon. After this peace summit is over and Ziri and Fantuzen have come to this agreement about the marriage alliance, it's time for them to they go on tour, basically, is what they do. And they're going around to Irano, and they're going to tell the people of Irano that we're working on peace, the marriage alliance is happening, and it's kind of like a PR tour is what it sounds like. When they decide to go do this, because of this sketchy situation that happened with a dead guy being in Fantuzen's room, the Queen of Iram is like, it seems like someone is trying to assassinate y'all or something, so we need to have like some sort of a security plan. They are going to have Jedi Knight Gela Natai and Axel Greylark are going to serve as their undercover security. Just to kind of give you some background on those two characters. So Gela Natai she's a Jedi Knight. When we meet her, she does seem very unsure of herself. It sounds like she's had some past failures as a Jedi that she's still working through. And she is happy about being a Jedi, and she knows that being a Jedi is the right thing for her, and she's connected to the Force and enthusiastic about learning more about the Force and things like that. But at the same time, she's also kind of trying to figure out like how exactly she fits within everything. So she knows she's on the right path, but not exactly like how she's gonna kind of do that. And so that's something that we see her dealing with throughout this book. We also have Axel, who is with them. Now, Axel, he is the other Chancellor's son. And for a big portion of this book, Axel was my favorite character in the book. He comes from a privileged background, which you can tell from pretty early on in the story, but he seems to enjoy living the scoundrel's life, and he doesn't really want anything to do with what his mother is doing as chancellor. At the same time, you can tell that he also enjoys the fame, and he enjoys like the privileges that come with that fame. So he's kind of got this like back and forth of like the life that he has versus like how he doesn't really want to relate to his mother, and kind of like how he does seem to get a lot of fun out of being involved in like these sketchy Coruscant gambling dens that he goes and does, and things like that. I mean, there were parts where he's just, he's charismatic and he's sarcastic, but without relying so much on the sarcasm that it gets old. And there were some of his lines in this book were just genuinely making me laugh as I was reading it. So I really liked him a lot. And for a lot of this, it kind of came across that like he is someone who he's ultimately looking out for himself, but you could see that there were times that he genuinely did care about the rest of the group that he was traveling with. And you could see that there were times that he did seem to want something more for himself other than just what he had been doing up until this point. And he does have a cute droid too, so I love a scoundrel with a sidekick. Now, during the tour, as they're going around and they're traveling, there are some close calls that happen because it seems like in the beginning that the people are not very accepting of this marriage alliance. They have a couple of close calls where the people are getting kind of out of hand. And one of the key moments of this is when somebody challenges Ziri to a duel. And basically how this works is what happens is he goes up to her, like throws down his dagger, and that means that you have to fight them because it's like a formal challenge. And so if Ziri turned that down, she would look like a coward and like it would be shameful for her to turn it down. So she pretty much has to accept it. The rest of the group who, they're not from Irano, so they don't really understand the magnitude of this challenge. They're like, just don't do it. Like, this is dangerous, but she pretty much has to. Otherwise, she's going to lose the respect of her people. Thank God she wins the duel, but it was like a close call because if she had lost the duel, then she would have had like no right to rule anymore. Then at another part in the tour, something else that happens is Fantu falls into a sinkhole. When he falls into the sinkhole, the rest of the group is going around looking for him. And when they do, they come across this group of trapped soldiers that has been trapped down there for God knows how long, and they don't even know that there's a peace treaty being negotiated. They think that the war is still like actively going on. That ends up becoming a hostile situation pretty quickly because they also partially blame Ziri for the fact that when they explain to them that there's a peace treaty and they kind of put it together that they've been down there for so long and they see that Ziri is with off-worlders, they get upset and they become hostile. So eventually what ends up happening is they do have like a standoff and then Ziri has to stun them all. And that is something where Ziri does have a lot of guilt over this situation because she really feels like she failed those soldiers who gave everything they had to fight for Irano, and that's how they ended up was, you know, some of them had starved to death down there, and it was just a really horrible situation. Through all of this is just one example of how throughout this book we are seeing Ziri come into her own as a ruler. And as time goes on, she's more and more willing to put aside that like fearfulness that is common on Irano of the outside world, particularly fear of Iram. She's really starting to put like the good of her people above this long held grudge. And I said this during my reading vlog. In some ways in this book, she does kind of remind me of like a more like gruff, hardened version of Padme in that way, where her duty as a ruler is what's the most important to her, and she's willing to put aside views that no longer serve that duty, or, you know, she's willing to kind of try to grow and change, and she's trying to think of the best thing for her people above like this grudge that a lot of other citizens of Irano seem to be having a hard time letting go of. After all of this happens, they do end up finding Fantu and he's fine, but he is covered in scorpions. Now, the scorpion part was interesting because so the scorpions on Irano, they are not venomous. Now, there's two types of scorpions in this novel which become important. The ones on Irano are not venomous, the ones on Iram are. The ones on Irano, basically, the scorpion is kind of like a symbol of their people, and they feel like it's like a symbol of the resilience that the citizens of Irano have. And so when Fantu Zen shows up covered in these scorpions, they call him, so it's called the Thial Fire Scorpion. That is a mouthful, so I still don't really know for sure if I'm saying that one right. Thial Fire, that's like, that is a tongue twister for me. But that's like, they call him Thial Fire Maid, which means like he's of Irano. And so it's a big deal when he shows up covered in these scorpions. And what's interesting is that after this, there is a period of time where people do seem to be more accepting of Fantu Zen after the scorpion moment. It's never explicitly stated if that's because people heard about the incident or if the incident was just a coincidence or if the incident was like a sign from the Force or something. That's never really fully explained. But I mean, it does happen where after this whole scorpion scenario, people do start to accept him more with after the whole Thial Fire Maid thing. Of course, not long after this, things do take a turn again, where Fantu Zen and Ziri are captured by what seem to be soldiers from Iram. And what they say is that they're capturing them and they're going to hold them hostage because they're traitors. While this is happening, they pretty much have to go with them because they have a bunch of bombs and they're going to like destroy the place if they don't go. So Ziri and Fantu, they just have to go with them without putting much of a fight up. And when that happens, Fantu says to Axel, well, I guess you'll have to come save us. And it really moves Axel that Fantu said this because he feels like he's like surprised that somebody trusts him. Like he's never had somebody trust him before to actually like put their life in his hands, basically. Gela and Axel, they go together and they jump on this barge where Fantu and Ziri are being held to go rescue them. And when they're looking for them, they see there's some graffiti on the ceiling that says Children of Irano. And so what they put together when they see this graffiti is that these people, that they were just pretending to be soldiers from Iram. They actually are from Irano, and they were staging this takeover because they're trying to derail this whole alliance. This group of people, they want to continue the war. They don't want to talk peace. They want to hold on to the grudge. And so they're trying to sabotage peace. And so this is like one of the things that they do to do that. And during all of this, we find out that the person who killed the guy in Fantu's room during the peace summit was also from the Children of Irano. So it wasn't the Path of the Open Hand that killed him. So at this point in the story, we have two groups that are trying to derail this alliance. We have the Path of the Open Hand and we have the Children of Irano. And they both are separate groups that are interfering with the situation. After Gela and Axel are successful in rescuing Fantu and Ziri from the ship, the three of them, basically the three non-Jedi, jump out of the ship with a parachute, and Gela does like a force leap, and everybody's okay. They're all fine now. After they rescue them, Axel does share with Ziri kind of a little bit more about his background, the reason that he hates the Jedi, and kind of why things have been so difficult for him. What he reveals to Ziri is that his father, who he was really close with, died an untimely death in a crash, and there was a Jedi there, and the Jedi did not really handle the situation with very much sensitivity. It sounded to me like, based on Axel's description, it was a Jedi that probably was burnt out, probably had seen a lot happen in their life, and was probably just thinking about looking for survivors and wasn't really handling a sensitive situation with very much tact. And so because of that, that really had a deep impression on Axel, and he's kind of held a grudge against the Jedi ever since. And so that's why throughout this book, up until this point, he's always kind of picking on Gela about being a Jedi and things like that. And you can just kind of tell from the way that he talks about the Jedi that he does have a problem with them. This is the part where the book did change. So we did have a pretty big twist where it is revealed that Axel actually has been working for the Mother being the leader of the Path of the Open Hand, who we meet in Path of Deceit. He has been working for her this whole time. What she's having him do is he's spying on the Jedi because the Mother is angry at the Queen of Iram for not upholding their deal that they made. And during this conversation, there is a mention about the Mother getting poison from the Queen of Iram to use for whatever the Path needs. So to me, that sounds like taking people out that she doesn't want around anymore, basically. And so their agreement that has gone south, it does have something to do with this poison. The Mother also instructs Axel to kill Abda, who is one of the other people from the Path of the Open Hand that's been working for her, and Axel does as she says, and he kills her. This Axel twist, it is something that I talked about more in my reading vlog, just kind of my emotions about that twist. The twist, it did change the way that I felt about him as a character, because after this twist, we find out that he actually isn't as emotionally connected as I previously thought he was. He actually views himself as chaos, and that's what he calls himself, as chaos. And he's working for the Mother, but he also doesn't like working for the Mother. And he has feelings for Gela, but he's also trying to resist them, and he also wants to derail everything. So, I mean, he's very much, after this twist, it's revealed that his character is much more erratic and has less of a consistent motivation for his actions than I had previously thought. So that is something that does change about this character over the course of this book. I explain more about, my reactions to that twist in the reading vlog too. If you want to kind of get more of an explanation, then go check that out. So one way that an example of Axel acting very erratically and his actions being kind of difficult to follow is we're led to believe up until this point that he has feelings for Gela, but then something happens where he wants to get a favor from somebody that he knows in the criminal underworld named Nay. And Nay runs a fighting ring called the Rusty Rancor. And because Axel needs a favor from Nay, he takes Gela and puts her in a fight in this fighting ring in order to earn his favor from Nay. And so, and Gela does lose the fight, and they end up taking her into custody at this place, and they're gonna like keep her there. And so that was something that surprised me, because I never anticipated Axel to treat Gela that way. Like, he had always been kind of, you know, a little bit like back and forth and like gray in some areas, but like that to me was like, that was a big betrayal, you know, in my opinion. But like when he's just about to leave her there, he ends up changing his mind at the last minute and going back and saving her again. He seems to be also unable to decide like which one of his emotions he actually wants to act on. So once Axel gets back with Gela, Fantu has Axel come with him to go find this research facility. And the way that this idea came about is after they found Apta's body, who had been killed using the poison, Fantu is like, there's a research facility that has to be producing this, and so he wants to find out where this poison is coming from. So him and Axel go to this facility. During this trip, they find out that it was the queen that had this poison researched and manufactured, and she's basically making weapons from it. Fantu confronts his mother, basically says as much to her, like, what are you doing? You know, like, this is a terrible idea, to say the least. And during this conversation between Fantu and his mother, what she tells him is the way that she got started with this whole weapon situation is it was because of the mother from the Path of the Open Hand. So the mother, what she did was she offered aid to Iram and originally did not ask for anything in return. And so the queen of Iram was like, oh, like, this is great. But then the mother did start asking for this poison manufacturing in return for the aid. And so the queen felt like she was indebted to the mother. And so that's how they ended up in this situation where the queen is kind of just at the Path of the Open Hand's mercy, and the Path of the Open Hand is kind of controlling the queen. In this conversation, Ziri had actually followed Fantu, so she overhears the whole thing. The three of them end up having a conversation where Ziri's like, okay, I don't want to do this whole bioweapon situation, but we should keep this research facility and continue using it to help us create better technologies that our planets can use together, because we're out here in the Outer Rim and we don't know if we can trust the Republic, so we kind of need to be able to have our own backs. So let's keep the research facility in use, and we'll use it to create better infrastructure that we can share with our new peace alliance that we're going to have. Then after all this, now we're finally at the wedding. So the wedding is about to go on, and right before the wedding, Axel has learned that there is a bounty that has been placed on his head. Before the wedding, Axel sets off his bounty hunting beacon, which is basically calling all of the bounty hunters to him. And I guess the reason he does this is because he wanted to sabotage the wedding. At this point, I was kind of having a hard time understanding Axel's like reasoning behind the things that he was doing, but I think that that was part of what Zoraida Córdova was doing, is trying to show us that this guy is like unpredictable, and you don't really know how he's going to be feeling one day, if he's going to want to help out or if he's going to want to just destroy things. So yeah, you don't know what you're going to get from this guy, basically. Before he flees, he does have a confrontation with Rev Farrell, who is one of the leaders of the Children of Irino. And the reason that Rev Farrell is mad at him is because the favor that Axel had asked Nay for earlier with the whole fighting ring situation, the favor was that she would dig up some dirt. And so Rev, basically, he's confronting Axel, and he's like, you framed me, like, you dug up this stuff about me. And so he's angry. So they have a fight, and Axel kills him. And then that's when Axel flees. During this fight, Rev Farrell destroys Axel's droid. And this part was interesting because Axel is like really upset that his droid was destroyed. And this is like it seems to be like the only person, I guess, I don't know, do we call droids people? I mean, they're kind of like people in a way, right? But anyway, that's beside the point. This is the only person that Axel really cares about, because when he sees that the droid was destroyed, he like, it stops him in his tracks, and he's upset, and he's like, I'm sorry, Quinn. I'm sorry, Quinn. Like, Quinn is the droid's name. and he's like all upset about this. So I thought that was interesting that out of all the people that he's met and all of that, the droid is really the only person that he has like consistent feelings toward that don't just turn on a dime. After Axel flees and they start figuring out what Axel has been up to, Gela puts the droid back together and they access all of these old holo recordings that were on the droid of Axel pretty much like saying everything he's doing. So now the truth about Axel is out and Gela knows the truth. At this point, you know, like the romance that I was hoping would happen between Gela and Axel, because up until this point they had been like flirting a lot and seemed like they were getting closer and things like that. That romance is complete, you know, in the garbage can now. So that's not happening anymore. Even despite all of this, the wedding does go forward. Ziri and Fantu, they do get married. They profess their love for each other. So, because through all of this tour and everything that they were doing, they did get closer and they did have a connection. So at least one of these romances worked out. I guess that's a win. Meanwhile, while that's going on, then we go back to Gela and Axel, where Gela tracks down Axel and he's about to destroy the dome that protects Iram from not only like being attacked, but also from these extreme storms that can happen on Iram. And so Axel's about to destroy the dome and Gela's like, why are you doing this? And it seems like Axel's doing it because he wants to destroy all of the poison, because he's had a change of heart about helping the mother get the poison. But then it's also like, you're also going to destroy everything else too. So like, that's not a good plan. So I don't really know what he was thinking about this. He ends up, Gela and him have a conversation where Gela's trying to convince him, like, you can still turn back, like, it's not too late, you can still change your mind and, like, do the right thing. And for Axel, he's like, no, like, doesn't work. He destroys the dome, and now the big storms are coming. And at the same time, there's also the children of Irino are coming over and they are attacking as well. It's hit the fan at this point, so to speak. And so Fantu and Ziri, after they're married now, they split up and Fantu's gonna try to help evacuate the people on the coast from these massive wave, like tsunami type waves that are about to come. And Ziri is going up in her ship and she's gonna go fight the children of Irino and try to stop that. So they're kind of trying to divide and conquer at this point when it comes to all these simultaneous problems that are exploding all at once. Thankfully, all of that does get managed as well as they can. And after this happens, now it is time for them to rebuild. So there has been at this point a lot of destruction that happened to Iram, especially from the waves when the dome was destroyed. Chancellor Greylock, Axel's mother, has him arrested for conspiracy, murder, and terrorism, and he goes to prison. At this point, the Queen of Iram has also agreed to destroy the remaining poison. Personally, I am wondering if that's the last that we're going to see of this poison. I wonder if this poison is going to show up in later High Republic books. I have no idea, because it kind of seems like, I don't know, the Path of the Open Hand was pretty serious about trying to get their hands on it. So I'll be surprised if that's the last that we see of the poison, but I guess we'll find out about that in the future. And then we also find out that Gela has decided to become a way seeker. And what she says when she makes this decision is kind of like she feels like the Force is leading her in different directions and she has a lot to learn and she kind of wants to be like out there doing that. But I'm interested to see kind of like what that would look like, because at this point, she says she wants to be a way seeker, but we don't really have any specific, she hasn't mentioned any specific plans, and we don't really know like that many details about what that's going to look like for her. So she decides to be a way seeker, but it remains to be seen like what exactly that's going to entail. In the epilogue of the story, the very last scene is Axel in prison, and a data pad is delivered to his cell mysteriously that has a message on it saying something to the effect of the fact that the mother hasn't forgotten him and the mother is still like looking out for him. And when he sees that, he gets kind of frustrated and he breaks the data pad, because he's like, it seems like he wants to be free of the mother, but then at the same time, after that, he still is calling himself Chaos. So, like, I kind of don't really know what this guy wants long term. So maybe that remains to be seen, and we'll find out in the future. It'll be interesting to see where this goes next. I'm wondering if Iram and Irino, if peace is actually going to last between them, which, you know, that's what Ziri and Fantu ended the book. Like, that was really their goal, was to make sure that whatever peace they achieve, it's actually going to last in the long term, and it's not just going to be something for their generation, then it's over. Also, I'm interested to see, like, what happens with Axel next. I really have no idea where this character is going. I don't know what to make of him at this point. I do wonder if we're going to revisit him at all, or if that's the end of him. The fact that he was featured in the epilogue does make me think that we will see him again. I'm just wondering what exactly that's going to look like. I also would like to see what Gela's life as a Wayseeker looks like too. So I'm wondering if we're going to find out more about that as well. Because I feel like in High Republic so far, we've been hearing a lot about Wayseekers, but I would like to actually see, like, a Jedi living as a Wayseeker and kind of like what that entails. So that's Convergence, y'all. I'm excited to see where High Republic goes next and how some of those things end up getting resolved, if at all, and kind of where we go from here. But thanks so much for watching, y'all, and I hope y'all have a great rest of your day. Bye, guys.